All right, so this is, of course, not part of a series that we began last week, but it does seem to fall in line because we're treating the same scripture, and that's all I'll have to say about that.
See, it does follow with a series because I titled it on my folder the passage name. So,
There you go. There you go.
Enough said, right?
So, Peter is writing to a church, you'll remember, that is facing increasing persecution. And we made the connection last week that persecution really is about unjust suffering. And unjust suffering is, in reality, the everyday experience of a world that is under the oppression of the Dark One. And so unjust suffering is something that we have to live with day in and day out. And it's hard. It's hard for everyone. And most often we don't do very well with it. In fact, our responses to unjust suffering oftentimes sabotage the well-being that we could have had if we didn't respond that way. And so we're opening ourselves to what the Spirit will say to us this morning through these verses in Peter. We'll go ahead and read them and then begin to unpack some of them. Servants, be submissive to your masters in all reverence, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the harsh and perverse. For this brings one joy, if, being present to God, one suffers unjustly. For what is noteworthy about enduring just punishment when you sin? But if when you do good and suffer for it you endure, this brings joy with God. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we may follow in his steps. He committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. All right. For to this you were called. To what do these words from verse 21 refer? So look back to the previous verses that came before it, and think back also some to last week. What is the this you were called to?
To suffer unjustly and endure punishment.
Be submissive.
by suffering unjustly and responding to it how Christ would, this helps us to further creation to its intended goal, which is to be summed up in Christ.
All of that stuff that we've said, all of that. You have to move past the wording to get to the place that Sam was talking about, but I was going to bring in some of what we mentioned in home church anyway, and that was the subject of all of that. Specifically, as we're looking at this, we've got to have this crazy idea that we have been called to unjust suffering, in which we find well-being with God. We have been called, which is simply another way of saying this is appointed to our lives, to unjust suffering, in which we find well-being by being present to God. That's an amazing thing. This lets us know that unjust suffering is not some sort of abnormality in the life of a human being who lives in this world. And it also lets us know that God is not calling us to a suffering-free life. And so I want us to look at these questions together. Why and how is this our calling? So as you press on in verse 21, For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, in order that we may follow in his steps. This is our calling because, and so the because here indicates cause. Right? Because here, hoti, indicates cause. We are called to this because Christ is the creation, the cause of our humanity. We derive our humanity from him. He unveils what the human kind of life looks like and what the corresponding human way of life looks like.
You say that last part.
We derive our humanity from Jesus because he is the cause. He unveils what the human kind of life looks like and what the corresponding human way of life looks like. So as always, every life has its kind. There's a kind of life that everything that is living and is created has. Every kind of life has a corresponding way of life. And so, when we look at Jesus, what we see is both the kind of life that is ours, because he is the creation of our life. We also see in Jesus what that kind of life looks like. What is the way that that life is carried out? We see both of those as we look at Jesus. Does that make sense?
You used to say, Jesus shows us his kind of life, so we can experience his way of life. So we can. How did you say that? How did you word that?
We have Jesus' kind of life, and in order to experience his quality of life, we must live his way of life. You can't live in a way different than Jesus and expect to have the quality of joy and love and power that Jesus himself experienced. The quality that we want in life comes from not only the kind of life we have, but the way of life we're living. The way of life we're living corresponds to the kind of life we have. We oftentimes break those things up into different categories that they don't have one to do with the other. They do very much. For example, David, as a human being, you're going to have a lot of problem if you think that the way that you breathe is to fill up the tub with water and then go stick your head under the water and suck in a breath. That's going to be problematic for you. You're not going to experience a good quality of life that way, because that's not how your kind of life takes in air. You do that by just breathing. We're not fish, so we don't have a fish way of life. And the quality of human life can only be enjoyed, as it's meant to be, by living a human way of life. Jesus shows us all of that. He shows us not only the kind of life that we have, life in communion with God, with the Father. He shows us the quality of life that kind of life produces, and he shows us the way of life that gets to enjoy it.
What's interesting is
Everything I said.
right, but with that, if you flesh it out a little further, it goes back the war within. You have false self.
Correct.
And then you have your true identity, right? And they're constantly in conflict with each other. And, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, what you really, truly long for and desire is that quality, that way of life in Christ, there's this tug and this war over here to live contrary to that because of deception.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right. So we see this whole idea of Jesus as the creation of our humanity. When we look at the word example here, leaving us an example. The word example in this verse means to engrave, to inscribe, and that comes from the idea of to carve into. Okay. And it also then means to establish or create the pattern for something. To establish or create the pattern for something. So here's how this word was used, one instance of how it was used often. When a teacher was instructing young students on how to write letters, the teacher would write the letters out on whatever was present, and the young students would trace the letters. And so the teacher's letter was the pattern. And the student, in tracing the pattern, took on that pattern for their own writing. So what is the significance of Christ's example for us, using these different ideas that are involved in this word? Meaning, again, to inscribe or engrave, to establish or create a pattern, and then this example of the teacher and tracing the letters. Use all of those, not in one sentence, but let them spark ideas for you.
Well, he said, I come that you might have life and life more abundantly. And he shows us through his own life how to, if we follow his way, he shows us that if we follow his way of life, then we can experience his quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. What's the difference in what we're talking about here and me listening to Pavarotti and then wanting to sing like him? What's the difference? Because there's a difference. Or me looking at a great artist and then me wanting to be able to create art like this person does.
You don't have the training to sing opera or practice. You could get the training and practice. You may sing like them, you may not.
Exactly. I may not.
You may not.
So what's the difference here?
You don't have
Jesus
Pavarotti
gives
in
us
you.
the power.
I don't have Pavarotti's voice. Right. I don't have Pavarotti in me.
Right.
Pavarotti's voice is not the source of my voice.
Jesus is the source of our humanity.
Correct.
So, unlike those, we can follow that pattern.
Yes. Exactly right. Using then this word of example, think about it in this way, that Jesus' life is engraved into yours. It is inscribed into what it means to be human. His life is the pattern after which ours is made. And as we trace his life with our lives, we experience well-being in the midst of suffering too.
And we follow, our life follows his pattern, not Adam's pattern, last Adam's pattern.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Questions, comments on this?
It's encouraging.
All right, let's move on then. He committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. So let's take a look at these words. He committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. This is what's going on when he is suffering unjustly. So when he's suffering unjustly, he is not committing sin. And when he is suffering unjustly, there is no deceit in his mouth. These two statements blend together. We could say, he committed no sin. He didn't miss the mark of loving God and humanity because no deceit was found in his mouth. Because that's what sin is to miss the mark of loving God, missing the mark of loving the people who are around you. And he didn't do that in the midst of unjust suffering, because there was no deceit in his mouth. So what does it mean to say there was no deceit found in his mouth?
He didn't say anything that the Father wasn't saying.
One of the things that means is he didn't say anything that the Father wasn't saying. Yes.
Would it be deception? There was no deception in his mouth?
Yes.
Like he didn't allow the enemy to blur the reality of the situation, to think that like our Father had abandoned him, or his Father
Yes.
had abandoned him.
Yes.
The deception was there. He just didn't allow it to manifest.
He never voiced it for himself. Yes, Sam.
Is there a connection between it talking about his mouth with the word being example for like engraving or inscribing, since that usually requires some kind of word?
You can make that connection, yes. You can.
So he never sinned, so sin never shaped any part of his life.
Right. It means all of his life was shaped according to love.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things you remind us all the time of, we do not repay evil with evil.
Yes.
So he's being threatened. He's being accused.
Right.
Right? He's being rejected. He's being trampled on. He doesn't then go, well, I have some power to deal some of this back to you.
Yes.
And he would.
Yes.
But he did not.
He did not. He did not. And so, another way to think about this, and we're all moving in that direction, is that Jesus didn't speak Satan's lie about his own suffering. He didn't speak the lie about what is Satan's view of God when I'm suffering. He didn't speak the lie about those people who caused his suffering. So he never looked at, he never gave voice to, both to himself and to others, what Satan had to say about this suffering. That means God doesn't care about you.
Right.
That means you don't matter that much to God. If God really cared, you wouldn't be suffering. Or you're such a loser, this is what you deserve. Or those other people, you need to take them out any way you can because they don't matter. They deserve you paying them back. All kinds of things that we think, right? He didn't speak these lies to others. He didn't speak them to himself. And this is why he did not revile, and this is why he did not threaten. Remember that this word revile speaks of words that intend to abuse others, to slander them, to tear them down. Words intended to abuse, or to slander, or to tear them down. When that was being done to him, he didn't do that in return. He only spoke what was true about them in the love of the Father. That's what it means to speak the truth. It means that whatever you are talking about it as it is in the love of the Father. And you can say something is off or is wrong in the love of the Father, what you can't then go on to do is to abuse and slander and harm in the Father's love.
You know, what it reminds me of is when you taught us when Pilate asked Jesus, he said, "Don't you hear the voice of your accusers?" And he said, "No, not one word." He was captivated by the Father.
Correct. This word threaten, as you might guess, means to bully or to menace, to frighten, to seek harm for someone. These behaviors are the result of deceit in our mouths.
And one way of looking at this is Jesus exercising incredible self-control to not lash out. But it kind of sounds like you're saying he wouldn't really have required a lot of self-control on his part because he understood what was really going on and knew that would have no bearing. Like it didn't suit what was happening to him.
Yes.
So it wasn't before him it was before him as an option, but it wasn't one that he even saw as a good one because he knew what was really true about what was happening.
Right. Exactly. It would be tantamount to filling the tub up again and sticking your head underneath the water for a breath. Yeah, that's an option. I could do that. I promise you I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, because if we weren't deceived, we would never bully or menace or frighten anyone.
Yes. And we wouldn't abuse, slander, tear down that person, even in our own heads, who's done it to us.
Yeah.
Because it's not in his mouth. It means he's not speaking these things. This is not something he's telling himself about what's going on. He's just not telling you. He's just not giving voice to this. So what are some of the lies we believe during unjust suffering?
Man, that is such a good question. Oh boy, because you begin to think through the woundedness you've received in your life, the bad choices that you've made, the assault the enemy's had on your life throughout, and the circumstances you maybe repeatedly find yourself in. And you develop these vows and these beliefs about what the world is and what the world isn't. And so an example for me is I'm keenly aware of and have been for so many years that one of those lies that operates is, you know what, Doc? At the end of the day, you can't trust anybody. You're on your own. You're the only person. Look, right? And that's a lie. That's coming straight from the enemy. It's not true. And it's good for us to identify what those lies are that are operating, because that will develop a very different kind of life. Right?
Yes.
If we operate from that deception.
Yes. Very different.
This whole story is Bob and I.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is, and there's a million lies within all of this, but it could all be summed up with control.
Mm-hmm.
Power struggle for control, trying to control the situation.
Yeah.
Or the other person, blah, 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 blah.
Sure. All of that.
All
right?
of it wrapped up in the control.
Absolutely.
Example for me is suffering unjustly is that sometimes that they deserve to be cut down.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
I was going through that in my head this morning with my brother. It was terrible. I couldn't get it out of my head, and he hasn't said anything to me negative in a long time, and it just keeps playing like a tape recorder.
Sure.
As many times as like you see in scripture that people are suffering in
Mm-hmm.
Christ. I guess it just depends on how you've grown up, but in my mind it still goes back to like I shouldn't have to suffer.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I think it's just been so ingrained. And it's
Yes.
just one of those things where it's like that's not in the Bible.
Right.
But it doesn't help when you obviously have people who have that mentality as well, whether that's pastors or whatever.
Right.
They're preaching all the good things that will come to you.
Yes.
It doesn't actually work that way in
Exactly.
life. So it's like that's what comes sometimes. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like I shouldn't. Maybe it's on me. Like maybe I did something wrong, and then this is like God's punishment.
Yes.
It's just things that like constantly have to be sorted out because that's not God.
Right. And we do have to constantly sort these.
Or if God loved you, He wouldn't allow this. If God really loved you, He wouldn't allow this.
Right.
You know, it's garbage.
Yes, yes.
When you're screaming, "Where are you, God? You don't care. Where are you?"
Yeah.
Here,
But He doesn't care.
there's no
Yeah.
help in sight, but He's right there with you, walking in it. I always look at when He suffered on the cross, how my view shifted, because that is supposed to be me too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, suffering for the love, Jesus' love for, and showing the world that no matter what you do to me, I'm still going to love you.
It's always helpful, I think, to keep in mind what we were talking about this past week in home church. But if Jesus is the creation of human life, and He is, how is it that God dealt with unjust suffering? He dealt with it by Jesus, right? And how was sin overcome? Well, by Jesus. How was death overcome? Jesus. It's like what they talk about in church. Jesus. You know, all of that. How was creation brought to its completion? Jesus. So that's what it means to be human. When we are in suffering, that's simply letting us know we incarnate God's answer to suffering.
Oh, wow.
We are the answer to unjust suffering as we incarnate the love of God in it. And this is why we always have to remember, when you look at how God overcomes death, He doesn't say a magic spell and then things change. He enters death and overcomes it with His life from the inside. When Jesus overcomes temptations, how does He do that? He doesn't, and then there's never any temptation. He gets tempted and overcomes temptation while He's getting tempted. God overcomes what isn't God by entering it and bringing the beauty of His life to it. Jesus is the incarnation of that life. So when He experienced unjust suffering, He incarnated the love of the Father, bringing that to the place where it wasn't experienced. That's what it means to be human. That's what it means that we rule with God. That's why God works with us, Romans 8:28. God works together with those who love Him to bring all things into the good. We are the ones who love Him. So God is working with us to bring that suffering into the good. It's not good. And it doesn't have some magical thing on it that it works out to be good. What we do is we bring that into the good. We do that by how are we present to God in the midst of it. That was last week's message. So asking, where is God in the midst of the suffering? Well, He's right here. You should be incarnating Him right this second. That is God's answer to suffering.
So how did you say that the first time, Rick? You said we incarnate.
What now?
You said we incarnate.
He said you're going to be reincarnated as a butterfly.
It wasn't that funny, but I'll give it to you.
We incarnate the love of the Father in suffering.
Would that be inappropriate for us to ask generally, or even of you in future messages, if my mind just goes to more of the how? How do we do that? I think a lot of us have come on this journey where we're getting to the point where we realize the Edenic or eternal life that we desire, that satisfy our longing, is going to be through the cross, and that's going to mean suffering. And we get intellectually, yes, this is how we're expanding the kingdom, and this is how we're bringing the goodness, the unity of Jesus to our domain. Got it. But yet, at the same time, how do we typically interpret our life when we're trampled on? We feel like the guy on the side of the road that's been run over by a truck, and we're having difficulty of where to file that and how to interpret that, and what the picture of Christ's joy actually looks like in that situation. And we're so poorly accustomed and traditioned and disciplined in the how of incarnating Christ in those instances of life. I find myself horribly immature in that area.
Yes, it goes back to, and we will deal with this, but it goes back to the idea of we are being accustomed to this. You cannot enter suffering with wrong perspective on what's going on and expect to experience what Jesus did. So the purpose of messages like this is to give us vision. How do I see this? What's actually happened? What's the story really look like that I'm living in? Without that, we're going to be led astray. So it's why it's so important to kind of get this. And let's press just a bit because we're at the end of our time, and I want to walk through very quickly just a couple of things. But this goes back to last week. Notice it says here in verse 19, "For this brings one joy, which is well-being, if, being present to God, one suffers unjustly."
So you have to be present to God in your suffering. That's where you're going to find your joy.
Yes.
If you do it outside of that, then you can't be the person that's trampled on the side of the road.
Correct.
Because there's a scale over your eyes. You're veiled.
Correct. This is why this next question, we won't list it as a question. Why? So, during this unjust suffering, Jesus continued entrusting. You see those two words up there? Continued entrusting. That word, entrusting, simply means to hand over, literally, paradido, to hand over. And so, when you hand something over, it's no longer in your hands.
You're not trying to control.
See, that's what I was going to make the connection to.
He handed over the control to God.
Yes. And so it's important for us to hand over because if we hold on to it, then in some way we're going to be making judgments about this. And remember that to judge is to discern between what is true and what isn't, and to do so in a way that aligns what has been damaged with the love of God. That's judging righteously. To discern between what's true and what isn't, and to align what has been damaged with the love of God. One of the reasons we do so poorly with unjust suffering is that's just not even how we think about this. So if we hand over, what is the outcome? If we hand over the other people to God, if we hand over ourselves to God, then there is a way in which that we are not going to then pursue certain ends because they're not our ends to accomplish. We're not holding on to this so that what we want gets done. We just don't judge and do righteousness very well.
To discern between what's true and what isn't, and then
to handle that in a way that aligns what is damaged with God's love. So the real issue here is you simply can't have well-being by committing sin, by missing the mark of love. However justified you think you are in not loving is the degree to which you're going to miss well-being when you do suffer unjustly. You can't have well-being by deceit or reviling or threatening other people, threatening God. Well, I just won't do anything for you. all of this behavior actually cuts you off, closes you off from well-being. I mean, if only we would realize when my brother has said this, that, or the other, and I think this or that about him, what I'm doing in that is cutting myself off from well-being. Well, I'm going to get back at them, and I'm going to show them, and I'm going to put it in such a way that they'll realize just what a worm they were for doing that to me. I've just excluded well-being from my life. I'll prove I'm right. I'll prove they were wrong. I've just excluded well-being from my life. And what actually happens is, when we miss the mark of love, and when we have Satan's lies in our mouths, we just make the situation worse. And so, in 2 minutes, in 2 minutes, let me walk through this Hebrews passage. There are a lot of connections here. We won't make all of them. Let's just make a couple of them. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance. Oh, endurance. If you endure, okay, there's a connection point there. Unjust suffering. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. This is the inheritance. This is the life we have. We don't get another one. It's this life with these unjust sufferings. Looking only unto Jesus. That's where everything goes bad. When we stop looking to Jesus to interpret what's going on. When we fall back on prior experiences, etc., etc. And then note that Jesus, as the cause, is the originator and completer of our faith in Hebrews. Our faith doesn't come from us. It's not something we work up. Jesus' faith is the source of our faith. Because his humanity is the source of our humanity. Who, for the joy, there it is, who for the well-being, and this is in the middle voice, so who for the joy or the well-being he set before himself, endured the cross, gave no weight to the shame. We give so much weight to the suffering, don't we? And is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. That means that, of course, he's victorious. Consider him, that means, so meditate on him, reflect on him, contemplate him, who endured, there it is again, such hostility from sinners against himself, in order that you don't become weary and discouraged in your souls. We lose heart. We become discouraged because we stop looking at Jesus. Because we don't set before ourselves Jesus. That simply means we're not tracing him anymore.
That's how we overcome suffering, by incarnating
Correct.
the love of the Father.
Correct.
The same way that Jesus did.
Yes. Any closing comments or questions? Yes.
So you asked the question, what connections do you see at the end? And with the great cloud of witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about two things. One, about the church on it goes to that full inside. Has all these icons painted on the walls. And they're like a great cloud of witnesses.
Yes.
All these amazing people who have lived lives. Like Don asked, how does that look? It's like, those are the people whose lives really did look like that. And
Yes.
so, like, seeing that, but then also reading. I don't know if we read enough the lives of the martyrs
Yes.
and the saints, because they were living it out over and over as regular people that they were put before us, but then they point you
Yes.
to Christ.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. Without, again, attempting to say anything about anything, just noting what we fill our lives with hero characters who obliterate the enemy.
Oh, yeah.
There's no disrespect given, or they break your arm or your neck. And they just do it to everybody they meet. We should be looking at the saints. Yeah. Any others? Any closing comments or questions?
Yeah, all the movies you cheer them on at the end.
Yeah.
Great technique.
Yes.
Although the stories that really won is where the hero will rise, rescue his people, and then what? Dies. Those are the stories that kept us. That's just written
Yes.
on our hearts.
It is. It's inscribed
Yep.
in us because that's his story.
That's it.
It almost should make us way better prayer warriors,
Yes.
because that's how we connect in prayer and the Word
Hmm.
to all of it.
Yes.
And we don't do that
Right.
as a church, as a whole, as a group,
Yep.
family. I mean, some people do. I'm not saying people don't, but you know, in the world, it should be happening.
Yes. All right. In just a few moments, we're going to celebrate the life that we share with Jesus. Well, of course we do. Of course we do. And it's a life that finds well-being in the midst of unjust suffering. It's not giddy about it, but it's a life that has well-being in the midst of it. It's a life that doesn't lose sight of beauty and goodness. Reflect on that for a bit, and then come and take from the table.